The Nintendo Switch 2 has been out for a couple of months now, and the conversation around it has been non-stop. After years of anticipation, speculation, and endless rumors, it finally arrived. The big question is whether it truly delivers as a worthy successor to the original Switch, or if it's closer to being a polished Switch Pro rather than a fully new generation. Right out of the gate, the upgrades are noticeable. Games that struggled on the original Switch now run with far fewer compromises. The jump from 30 to 60 frames per second in titles like Tears of the Kingdom is transformative, offering a smoother and more immersive experience that fans had been begging for. Visuals are sharper, textures are clearer, and load times have been dramatically cut down. For many, that alone makes the Switch 2 feel like the upgrade Nintendo players have been waiting for. But the conversation doesn't end there, because as soon as the initial excitement fades, comparisons with other handhelds enter the picture. Competing devices like the Steam Deck OLED and other portable PCs set a high bar, with better displays, stronger performance, and massive libraries of modern titles. The Switch 2 can now run demanding games such as Hogwarts Legacy and Cyberpunk 2077, something unthinkable on the original hardware. Yet when stacked against handheld PCs, those same games often run smoother and look sharper elsewhere. That raises the central question: is this about raw power, or is it about Nintendo exclusives? The hardware itself is a mixed bag. On the positive side, the larger screen, improved Joy-Cons, and better kickstand make it more comfortable to use for long gaming sessions. Docked gameplay looks fantastic on a big television, with upgraded visuals breathing new life into older titles. However, there are clear shortcomings. The Switch 2 uses an LCD screen rather than OLED, which means weaker viewing angles, less vibrant contrast, and washed-out blacks compared to the Switch OLED. Outdoors or under bright light, visibility becomes an issue. And then there's motion handling. Slow response times make fine details appear mushy when moving, especially in games capped at 30 frames per second. Battery life is another weak point. At around 75% brightness, players can expect roughly 2 hours of Cyberpunk 2077, 2.5 with Tears of the Kingdom, and closer to 3 hours with titles like Mario Kart World. Simpler games naturally last longer, but compared to the Switch OLED, the endurance here feels like a step backward. A portable gaming console needs to deliver more than that, and many will find themselves relying heavily on power banks to keep sessions going. Storage is both improved and surprisingly limiting. The Switch 2 ships with 8 times the storage of the original Switch, but modern games are far larger than before. Just a handful of digital downloads can eat up most of the space, meaning microSD cards, or sticking with physical cartridges, remain essential. The good news is that physical copies often store most of the game data, but Nintendo's new key-based system sometimes turns cartridges into little more than download unlocks. Checking which games carry full installs versus digital keys is important before buying. New features exist, but feel inconsistent in their usefulness. Built-in game chat, with a camera overlaying the player's face during online matches, sounds fun in theory, but rarely finds regular use. Joy-Con mouse support offers novelty and added precision in certain games, but isn't likely to change how most people play. These extras are nice touches, but not game-changing. Where the Switch 2 shines most is in its library, both with new exclusives and upgraded older titles. Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World headline the launch lineup, bringing classic Nintendo magic into sharper, faster, and more detailed experiences. But perhaps more impressive are the upgrades to existing favorites. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both offer paid upgrade packs or full Switch 2 editions, delivering higher resolution textures, faster load times, HDR support, and most importantly, 60 frames per second gameplay. This alone makes them feel refreshed and worth revisiting. Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom, which had performance issues on the original Switch, now run locked at 60 frames per second, with quadrupled resolution in both docked and handheld modes. Mario Odyssey benefits from improved draw distance and runs at 1080p handheld, 1800p dynamic docked, and a solid 60 frames per second across the board. Hogwarts Legacy sees perhaps the most dramatic difference, moving from a heavily compromised port on the original Switch to something comparable to a PlayStation 4 experience. Splatoon 3 pushes even further, with 4K 60 frames per second docked and 1080p 60 frames per second handheld. Other notable upgrades include Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, now free of the stutter that plagued the originals, running near 4K at 60 frames per second when docked. Metroid Prime 4 jumps to 4K 60 frames per second on TV and 1080p at 120 Hz, with variable refresh rate in handheld mode. Across the board, the Switch 2 breathes life into Nintendo's back catalog, though the degree of improvement varies depending on how much effort developers put into patches or paid upgrades. That said, even with its strengths, the Switch 2 constantly invites comparison to competitors. The Steam Deck OLED, for instance, offers a 90 Hz OLED panel, brighter visuals, stronger battery life, and access to the entire Steam library. Games often look and play better on that device. But what it doesn't have, and what the Switch 2 leverages most effectively, are Nintendo's first-party titles. Mario, Zelda, Pokémon, and Donkey Kong are powerful reasons to stay within the Nintendo ecosystem. At the end of the day, choosing between a Switch 2 and a handheld PC often comes down to a single question: how much do Nintendo exclusives matter? For those who do invest, there are a few essential tips to maximize the experience. Physical games remain the best bet for saving storage and enabling resale or sharing. Certain settings can also extend battery life. Disabling 120 Hz mode, reducing brightness, using airplane mode, or even switching the RGB range to limited all-help stretch sessions further. Stopping charges at 90% also prolongs long-term battery health. Beyond that, accessories are key. A protective case and screen protector are almost mandatory, given the fragility of the hardware. A Pro controller adds much more comfort and precision for extended play, while the improved magnetic Joy-Con system offers a more secure and versatile setup than the old rails. Game sharing is another useful feature. Physical cartridges with full data can easily be swapped between players, but even digital titles can be shared by setting up a family group. Games can be temporarily lent out, returning automatically after 2 weeks. Considering how expensive Nintendo titles tend to be, this is a welcome option. Looking forward, Nintendo has teased more titles through recent directs and showcases. Upcoming highlights include Borderlands 4, Monster Hunter Stories 3, and 007 First Light. Many of these are ports or enhanced versions of older games, but they expand the library nonetheless. The real excitement, however, will be in the next big first-party reveals, most notably the inevitable new Mario title, which will likely define the system much like Odyssey did for the original Switch. So, what does all this mean? The Switch 2 is a clear upgrade over the original, especially for those still using the launch model. Bigger screen, faster performance, stronger visuals, and access to more demanding games make it a very capable hybrid console. However, compared to the OLED model, the trade-offs are harder to ignore. Battery life and screen quality can feel like steps backward, leaving some players questioning whether to buy now or wait for a likely Switch 2 OLED refresh down the line. Ultimately, the Switch 2 is fun, versatile, and packed with Nintendo charm. But it isn't perfect, and it faces stronger competition than its predecessor ever did. For those who value exclusives above all else, it's a must-have. For everyone else, it may depend on price, patience, and whether the upgrades outweigh the compromises. Thank you for watching. If this breakdown was helpful, a like and subscribe would be fantastic. What's your take on the Switch 2? Have you tried it yet, or are you holding out for the next version? Drop your thoughts below, and until next time, happy gaming.